friends, this is the MrsVolfie from Our Half Acre Homestead. I have been getting a lot of questions on dehydrating, and so I'm going to tackle them here. I also got an email that I want to answer because there was a lot of components to the answer that would just take too long to type. So, when it comes to dehydrating, folks, I've never done meat. I plan on it, but I've never done it. So, don't ask me any jerky questions or dehydrating meat questions because I'm not there yet. There's a difference between home dehydrating and freeze-dried food. Dehydrated and freeze-dried are two totally different processes, and freeze-dried food is got chemicals in it as well. So that's why I prefer dehydrated food. But in a pinch, if I could afford freeze-dried food, I would probably have some in food storage for emergencies, because they do last 10 to 30 years depending on what it is that you get. Now, a lot of your dehydrating issues center around whether or not to blanch food before you dehydrate it, or how to store it, okay? Hands down, if you can dehydrate anything, vacuum seal it and put it in the freezer, that will last indefinitely, okay? But the whole point of dehydrating food for me is to have it on the shelf. So, now they say that dehydrated food, fruits and vegetables, are good for up to 1 year. I don't necessarily believe that, because I dehydrated raw eggs, vacuum sealed them, and ate them 2 years later. They were gritty and nasty, but in an emergency situation, they would do. I just wouldn't necessarily eat them the way I did. I would probably put them in baked goods. Does that mean it's okay to have them that long? I don't know. I just know I have. Now, it all depends on how you store them. If you just want to keep them in a jar on your shelf, make sure the jar is clean, dry. Moisture is the enemy to dehydrated food. So you want to put your dehydrated vegetables in a tight jar with a tight fitting lid. You really don't want any chance of any moisture getting inside that jar, because that could just ruin them over long term. Okay, so what I do is I pack them down tightly in the jar, and I put a rubber gasket ring on them, or like a good stout seal, and I store them in my pantry, where for the most part it is cool and dim. If you want to extend the life, by all means put them in the freezer. And if you vacuum seal them, that's even better. Okay, but they say, the internet says 1 year. I say I've dehydrated stuff and stored it for up to 3. For us, food storage is not so much in prepping as it is in going back to the old way of doing things. In other words, grow or buy in-season stuff and then put it up for the winter, because everyone knows in the winter prices are just insane. Well, they're just not that great this year either. And let's talk about blanching with the dehydrating. What to blanch, what not to blanch, and how long. Folks, I learned this by trial and error. I found out that if I don't blanch my celery, now, if you cut your celery extremely thin, and you don't have to blanch it. But who has time to cut paper thin slices of celery? Not me. So blanching, when it comes to things like peppers and celery and onions. Yes, folks, not green onions, but if you're going to dehydrate regular onions, big onions, you slice them, you blanch them for 1 minute. It's the same premise as the celery and the green pepper. It opens the pores so that when you put them in the dehydrator, the moisture comes out faster. You're saving energy and you're opening the pores also, not just to dehydrate faster, but to hydrate again. It hydrates better and faster. So there are some things, sliced onions you would blanch for a minute in boiling water. So put it in when it's boiling, 1 minute. Peppers, I know I did them for 4 minutes, but they could have been, it would have been just as good at 2. Celery, full 3 minutes at least. Okay, 2 to 3 minutes. You don't have to blanch sliced tomatoes because most of the time you're going to grind them anyway, or I do anyway. I've never blanched my zucchini. Never had any problems with those drying. When it comes to the onions, though, if you don't blanch them, you can dehydrate onions without blanching. But it'll take 3 times as long, and they're only good for making onion powder. Okay? Mushrooms. Oh my God, mushrooms. I learned the hard way with mushrooms. Mushrooms have to be cooked, boiled, okay? And don't think you can stir fry them and stuff because you can't dehydrate stuff that is oiled, okay? So slice and bring your water to a boil, slice your mushrooms, put them in that water, and you boil them until they look like they came out of a can, okay? That's the only way you're going to dehydrate mushrooms and bring them back with hydration to look like mushrooms. They're going to look like they came out of a can, but it's better than having bits of chewy, rubbery things that are no good for anything but grinding into powder. What else did someone ask me? Someone asked me, oh, lid rings. They are now changing how we use our inner seal lids for our ring and seal canner lids. They're now saying you don't have to boil them. They're saying you don't even have to simmer them. You just have to wash them in warm soapy water and rinse and then use. Now, the reason they say that they're doing this is because the inner gasket of the lid is now being made of a newer material that is BPA free. Well, I'm sorry, folks. I didn't even know those were plastic on the inside. The rubber gasket I always thought was a rubber gasket. And the reason they're saying not to boil or simmer them now is because the new material, if gets too hot before being put on the jar, it can cause a breakdown issue or a breakdown of your seal later on. Hello? What the hell are you people thinking? A, it should be a rubber gasket. It should be rubber material, not plastic. I didn't know this. And B, why the heck are you replacing a seal, okay, with something that may break down easier than what we're already using? That just does not make any sense to me. Any sense whatsoever. So folks, beware. Don't boil your lids. At best, wash them, rinse them, and just put them in a bowl of warm water. The original reason for boiling your rings, not your rings, your inner seals or your rubber rings, was to soften them up so that they would make a seal. But now they don't want you to soften them up because softening them up might wreck them. That makes absolute no sense to me. So I'm going to make a recommendation to people. Start buying Tatler lids, folks. Those, at least, I mean, they are a bit more trouble because you do have to simmer, not necessarily boil, but drop into boiled simmering water the rubber rings, and that your rubber rings are hot, and that your threads on your jar and the tops of your jar are extremely clean, to the point of wiping the tops with vinegar, okay? But folks, start investing in Tatler because they're now undermining our lids. That's the way I see it. I've had several people email me and ask me how I feel about the new lids, and that's the first I've heard of them. Okay. Angela emailed me that she would love to see and hear about all my favorite all-time kitchen gadgets. What are the tools I can't live without? And what is my wish list for the perfect kitchen? Well, for starters, my kitchen isn't perfect and probably never will be. But let's not get into my wish list just yet. My favorite tools, and you guys all know this, my favorite gadgets that I can't live without are my dehydrator, my pressure canners, my jar lid grippers, a good knife sharpener, and I can live without my KitchenAid and I can live without my dishwasher, but God, they make my life so much easier. When you have health issues and you're trying to can and dehydrate, and this time of year dishes pile up. Then there's my chop wizard. I love that chop wizard thing that I just put but beware folks, they call it an onion chopper, but it's a chop wizard, and it's great for things like potatoes and onions and carrots. Don't use them for turnips or sweet potatoes. You will break them. You won't break the part that cuts. You'll break the container that they hold in because the hinge just isn't strong enough for that kind of cutter. But I'd like to see one made, a heavy duty one made for cutting up turnips and stuff. My wish list? Well, I mean, I have everything I need, but if I could have what I wanted, I would like a sorbent system snorkel vac sealer. Only because my seal-a-meal is really, the bags are really, really expensive, okay? And the sorbent systems snorkel vac has a really good, powerful vacuum on it. It can do 2 to 3 bags at one time, and you can reuse things like Mylar chip bags. You can vacuum seal and store your Mylar with them. So that's a really good investment. If you haven't bought a sealer yet, a vacuum sealer, go with the sorbent systems. You can use just about any bag you want, and you can buy BPA-free plastic storage bags now. An all-American pressure canner. Oh my goodness. Hands down, I don't have one. I haven't used one, but hands down, those are the most beautiful canners I have ever seen. And why? Yes, they're big, and yes, they have screwy things and all that stuff. But A, they are built to last forever. B, they don't have a lot of parts that need replacing, like the rubber gasket on the inside of today's pressure canners. Now, my old pressure canner that I still use has a heavy duty rubber gasket, and all I ever need to do to get that working, if it's not quite sealing down, is when I'm heating up my pressure canner to get ready to put jars in, I throw the rubber gasket in the bottom of that and loosen it up and then put it back in, just like you would with a sealing jar. The newer pressure canners, the rubber gaskets are not as strong. They're not as thick. They are going to break down faster. What I love about the All-American pressure canner is that it has no gasket. At absolute most, you just put a little bit of oil or Vaseline or something around the edge to create a seal between the metals of the lids. So, I mean, those things are built to last. So yeah, that's on my wish list, and one of these days I'll have one. Nice big deep stainless steel sinks. 3 would be awesome, but 2 is good. With the head, the faucets where the head sprayer comes right off, like, you have the nice high deep faucet, but then it has a detachable sprayer head. That would be amazing. I'd love a cook stove in my front porch for winter cooking. I love Misty Prepper's Pioneer Princess. One of these days, God willing, I'm going to have a cook stove in my porch for winter cooking. When Howie and I were first married, I had a 1939 Fireco bridge wall with butter-colored enamel and all the chrome edging and the warming ovens, and it had a stove. The oven was bigger than my regular kitchen stove. My regular kitchen stove at the time. It was like a 30-inch oven. It was huge. And I cooked all winter long on that thing. I cooked. As a matter of fact, that was a wedding gift to me from Howie. And I really miss my cook stove. A good set, like, you know, folks, I love my cast iron, but a good set of heavy bottom stainless steel pots and pans with the handles that that are not just screwed on or held on with a screw, that are bolted right to the pot. Like a good set of stainless steel heavy bottom pots and pans, those would be wonderful to have. So, I hope this answered some questions. This is the Mrs. Wolfie from Our Half Acre Homestead saying, I hope everybody has an amazing Labor Day weekend and happy harvest. Take care. Bye-bye.